The reason the federal preemption doesn't have anything to do with medical marijuana law is because that is entirely an issue of state law. So is our initiative.
Right.
We don't have anything to do with the feds. We're not telling them to do anything. We're not doing a darn thing. We're just discussing an issue entirely of state law with state actors that never have anything to do with federal law.
I have two questions. One is, why in California are they saying making it a taxation thing?
Right.
That is really helping them get it
Yes,
passed.
sure is.
And that we're not going to have that. And
Nope.
the second question is, why 18? Why not? Why 21? Why 18? You know. how do you
Second
decide?
question first.
Okay.
Because you get this one too, and I'm glad you asked this because people said, oh, it's going to fail for this reason. First of all, I believe it should be 18 because I think that's the age at which you're an adult for everything else. And
Except alcohol.
Exactly, and here's where I'm going. You're an adult for everything else. As a practical matter, I cannot write this initiative to create a 21 and over for marijuana because the entire legal scheme in Washington State that works for juveniles is based on 18. I would have to rewrite the entire juvenile code to get there, and I'm not going to do that because I'd screw it up. It's too complex, and you're going to wind up with a split. You're going to create, a second-class citizens between the ages of 18 and 21, and it's just not a good idea. It's also not a good idea because you're creating another small but unregulated prohibition market. And there's a group of college professors, you can go online, there's a group of college professors called the Amethyst Initiative, and it's actually college presidents, and they're asking the federal government to remove the 21-year-old drinking age on federal highway money to get back to 18 because college campuses have seen an increase in deaths due to underage drinking on college campuses that is a freaking epidemic. And the reason it's an epidemic is because, as a perfect example of an unregulated prohibition market, you have people going to college at 18, not able to buy alcohol, so they're in dorm rooms, drinking with no supervision, no trained bartender. Somebody gets in trouble, they pass out, they die, whereas a trained bartender is like calling the ambulance. There's no regulation there. So that 18 to 21 market, you've got a huge skyrocketing teen death drinking problem. I'm not going to participate in creating some kind of screwed up prohibition thing where we've got kids 18 to 21 that fall into this gap targeted. It's just not going to happen. That and the fact that the whole juvenile thing is 18, we got to make it 18. The other question?
How come in California
they got the tax thing? Well, because they are gambling. They are gambling that the federal government is not going to come in and say, no, don't give me that money, or no, don't, interfere with our tax scheme.
But without that, would they be able to be as far as they are?
Yeah. In fact, my opinion, they'd be farther if they had something like we're doing. There are a lot of activists down in California that came up to me and told me when I was down there this year trying to raise money for us in April that they wished they could run our initiative. And every single lawyer I know in California at the Aspen convention came up to Jeff Steinborn and myself and said, you guys, this is amazing. I wish we could run with this. I've gotten emails and stuff from lawyers on the East Coast that, one guy sent me the newspaper from 1923 New York where they repealed prohibition. He goes, I know what you're doing. So I mean, in terms of people that know preemption law, people that know reform, people that know, about repeal of prohibition in terms of legal minds, they are with us. There are a hell of a lot of other people that wish they could be running this initiative in California because the reform down there does not go far enough. I mean, they're decrimming 1 ounce of marijuana for adults. 1 ounce. That's nothing. I mean, you can go through that in a week. So, I mean, come on, right? Let's be serious here. That's nothing. And you have a little bitty grow canopy. And then everything gets punted to the local government. I got to tell you, I've practiced in California because I do federal law, and I did some of the first federal medical marijuana cases down in California. California's great, it's liberal, it's great, but it's not so liberal if you're in one of those counties out there that's voted Republican every single time since like 1901 or something, and is full of people that want to put everybody here in jail. I mean, I've been in those counties. It's not a liberal state once you get outside of Southern California and San Francisco. So they're running into trouble down there. That reform down there is not as good as it should be. It's not as strong as it should be, and it's going to run into ridiculous, complicated problems on the local level. You're going to wind up fighting in California about zoning. They're going to use the land use regs to get you. That's how they're going to get you. That's the new anti-marijuana law that's coming. It's all about ordinances and zoning regs. I've been down in LA where we were fighting about that stuff. I'm like, Jesus, I'm not a land use lawyer. I'm a constitutional lawyer. I don't know anything about fucking hot dog stands, you know, and versus, daycares versus liquor stores. They've got whole regulatory schemes they're going to plug you into because you're going to give them the opportunity to do that. We're not doing that. That's not us. We're gonna take the prohibition away, and we're gonna say replace it with something that makes sense. You know, do some regs that make sense, and there are people here ready to do that.
In 1923, did the feds prosecute in New York State after they did continue to prosecute? So the feds could continue to prosecute here.
No doubt they will for large-scale commercial applications, but there is no way, if we pass our law, the other thing that they don't see coming, and this is legal stuff, which is, I assume, pretty boring, but I'll trudge on for just one more mile here. The other thing that we have in our back pocket, we are drawing them in. And then we get them drawn in, and then we shoot them. What happens is our law repeals prohibition, gets rid of it as a matter of state law. The feds still have jurisdiction. That means they theoretically can come in and prosecute people for what we just said you couldn't do. There is a constitutional doctrine that has not been used a lot, that was revamped by a conservative federal judge named Kozinski in a case called Conant, where we were fighting about doctors' ability to do medical marijuana authorizations. And he said in that case, he gave us, the people that were thinking, a little kernel, and he said, commandeering doctrine prevents the federal government from directing matters exclusive to state law when state law and federal law conflict. It's an exception to preemption doctrine. It's a check against preemption, which goes back to the very bones of our federalism, okay? You may not realize this, but the fight that we're in over medical marijuana is the most significant constitutional scrap that we have had in this country since the Civil War. Okay? That is what we're fighting for in terms of constitution. I mean, history books 200 years from now, when we're all like really dead, they're going to look at this stuff and they're going to say, wow, that was a massive constitutional battle. They were fighting for the bones of federalism. Those people knew what they were doing. And we do. We know what we're doing. We are fighting for that federalism. And when they come back in and try and prosecute us after we've got the law in federal court, that's when you whip out commandeering doctrine and you say, okay, Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is where we're going, has already endorsed this, so we know we're coming out of the Ninth Circuit, we're going to the Supreme Court. And because that is a conservative states' rights doctrine, we will be using that conservative states' rights doctrine to move our progressive agenda forward. The conservative judges on the court will be caught in one hell of a dilemma, because they will either have to repudiate everything they stand for legally, jurisprudentially, or they will have to endorse commandeering doctrine and leave us finally the hell alone.